right, our first guest for The Sound of First is Nate Hanners of the Austin Record Convention.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
So glad that you're here. You know what I mean? We had to kind of do some moving around to get you here.
Yeah, man, I'm really glad to be able to do this. I was really fun talking with you at the record show a few weeks ago, and when you talked about this idea, I was like, yeah, I hope that's interesting for people. I'd love to chat about the record show and other things. So
yeah, totally. So Gus was telling me that when y'all were kids, that you guys used to work the record convention together.
Yeah, since I was really little, I don't think I actually attended the first record show. I wish I'd been there, but I was too young. I think that was 1981, so I would have been really small. But they had it at the Zilker Clubhouse, which is still around.
Yeah.
And I guess it was packed. You know, they said they were selling beer, and they ran out of beer, and it was like standing room only, a bunch of people digging in records packed in there. So I think they maybe had one more there. Sadly, I don't quite remember, but shortly after that, they moved to Palmer Auditorium, which is where the Long Center is now.
Yeah.
And it looked really similar to how it looks now. If people look up online what it used to look like, it was a complete circle, big round thing. But actually, the record show was in the basement initially, which I guess you could rent the basement or the ground floor.
Wow.
And it was cheaper to rent the basement, obviously.
Yeah.
So my first memory of the record show is in that basement. There was this big long ramp that went down into the basement for like loading stuff, and they had there's the same kind of carts we have now at the record show. They're these big floor carts that have like a big pallet on the bottom, and you could put probably like, I don't know, 15 boxes of records on there, which means it weighs a ton, and these dealers would be trying to keep it from rolling away from them as they went down the ramp, you know.
Momentum.
And once or twice it got away from someone who, they had to scream, look out, the records came careening down. But that was how it was back in the day. That's my first memory. I was really little, and I was a only child, and so one of the things my parents did, which I'll be eternally grateful for, is that they really, I don't know if they did this deliberately because they knew about like typical only child kind of personalities and they were trying to prevent that, or if they just knew I was happier when I had friends around. But they always wanted to include my friends in all sorts of stuff that we did. And Russ is one of my earliest friends. I think I met him when we were 3. Wow. So we've gone back way back in the day. And so because we lived across the street from each other, he would visit his grandma across the street from me on the weekends and stuff. And so when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, I didn't do too much. I might like stamp people's hands at the door or whatever. Most of the time I read comic books under the table. But once we got to be, useful in 11, 12, 13 and stuff, they put us to work doing stuff. And, we became their kind of army of volunteers, me and my friends. And so the same people, if you go to the record show, the same people that are there now are my friends from childhood. It's all the same people.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. So to let everyone know, Nate's father is the founder of the Austin Record Convention.
Yes, I guess we should say that. My dad and my mom started the record show in '81, and it's been going for next year's our 45th anniversary.
Wow,
it's wild. And I took it over from my dad, officially. I don't know, like 10 years ago or something. I can't remember, maybe 8 years ago.
What was wild when we were talking, maybe it was the second day after we had our initial conversation. It was funny because you were showing me, dude, you should go through all this real quick, and then you're like, wait a minute, and you took off your backpack and you whipped out this mic and you started making announcements, and I was just like, oh my God, that's the voice. He's the voice.
I'm the record show voice.
Yeah.
The microphone is really my sole, the source of all my, power at the record show. Without that, I have nothing. I'm just another person with opinion. But yeah, I'm always on there, making announcements and babbling about stuff and trying to get people to use the text-to-search system or, go visit a vendor or move a car or whatever the heck it is.
Just keep it going.
Lost and found items.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my head exploded when it happened. I'm serious because I mean, you're this voice that I've been hearing for like 10 years, right? I'm like, oh my God, that's him.
That's me. It's funny to watch people when I pull out the mic and I'll forget, that someone will come up to me and ask a question about the show, and I'll be like, hey, I lost my, I found a credit card or whatever, and I'll like whip out the mic and be like, if your credit card is missing or whatever, and the person's always like, you can kind of do it from anywhere. It's a wireless mic, so I think people think there's some sort of control room somewhere in the show, but nope, I just have a wireless mic in my backpack that they give me, and bust it out, start talking.
Yeah, I mean that's what I thought. I thought you know it was someone sitting in a control room, kind of over
Yeah.
in front of a bunch of like TV monitors,
Right.
watching
Some
everybody.
sort of
but,
mastermind, a panopticon situation. I can see
exactly.
everything. You know.
Yeah, so
It's a smart process for you to kind of walk around and see
Right.
what's going on, taking the temperature, see if there's anybody needs any help or
Right.
assistance or questions. That's awesome. Wow.
yeah. So for me, the Austin Record Convention, I mean, is a big deal. I think I went my very first one. I went with my very first girlfriend
Oh yeah.
ever, and it was upstairs.
Mhm. The ground floor of the auditorium.
Yeah.
Auditorium. Yeah.
And I remember we didn't stay in there for very long. I think the reason why we didn't stay in there very long is because, my girlfriend was just like, it's kind of like when you go shopping, with your lady and she walks into like a clothing store and you have to sit there and hold her purse. You know what I
Right,
mean?
yeah.
It's like one of those things.
Yeah.
And so I think she was like, I'm like, okay. So I remember the record that I bought. It was a Badfinger. It was a Badfinger 7-inch. Yeah.
Nice.
And so that's all I got the first time I was there.
Nice.
And I meant to bring this flyer from it, but
That's awesome.
yeah, but it was and ever since then it's been a big deal. Then being a DJ, that was just just a big deal. Just
Yeah.
because I would just score tons of records while I was there, and then years later, like having an actual table with Baby G.
Yeah.
When you guys were at the flea market.
Oh, the
In
flea
Northern-
market.
Yeah, you love that, don't you?
Oh, I hated that so much.
Like
My dad got-
working a flea market.
Well, what
situation?
happened was when they booted us out of the auditorium to make the Long Center, and my dad wasn't super thrilled about that. And I think we did one show at the Coliseum, which was right next door. It was like that Quonset
Yeah,
hut thing.
yeah, that's where they used to have the citywide garage sale, right?
Yeah, so I think we did one or maybe two shows there, and then that also was getting transformed. And so Dad moved it out to a couple different venues in North Austin. I think we were at the Crockett Center for a while, if you remember that. And then after the Crockett Center, we were at this other place way out on North Lamar, like farther. No one really knows how long Lamar is until you drive on it for
Oh,
a long
yeah.
time. It goes way out there.
It does.
And so it was way out there on North Lamar, and it was. I guess it worked. The show kept going. It didn't stop or whatever. But I didn't really like it because it felt like such a downgrade from Palmer Auditorium. And I think Dad was worried that when they got Palmer Event Center set up, that the people would object to the paid parking. Which is really. I mean, I can see why he would think that, especially coming from old school Austin. Right now, $10 parking, whatever, is not a big deal. But back in the day, it was free, and I think considering the admission of the show is only $5 and people have a limited budget for records, he thought it would eat into their what they wanted to spend at the show. And I can see that. I mean, the economics of the record show are of great interest to me because one of the reasons we've kept the price at $5 for, man, I was trying to remember when it moved. It was like $3 initially, and I think it moved to $5 in I want to say like 83 or 84. And it's been that way ever since. So we're like approaching 40 years of the $5 admission,
Nice.
which I really don't want to change. It would make things easier on me if I could raise it. But I think the economics of a record show are really interesting because the more money you charge the shoppers for coming in, I mean, we have to charge them something to help us pay all the bills and stuff, but the more money you charge them, the less they end up spending, at the event itself, which is then bad for the vendors who are coming a long way. And kind of inversely or similarly, you can't charge the vendors a whole bunch for the tables because they're driving records from all sorts of places, huge trailer fulls. They got to stay in hotels along the way and buy food and gas and then pay for hotels in Austin, which is getting more expensive. So it's kind of a delicate balance, right? You need to make sure that there's enough margin in it for both the shoppers and the vendors. And so all that to say that I was convinced that the centrality, like the good location of Palmer Event Center would outweigh the downsides of like the parking cost. And so far that's turned out to be true. People are kind of used to kind of factoring in the parking cost, for their when it's Central Austin. And I think the facility is so nice. Like Palmer Event Center is really great. We're really lucky to have that as a city. If something like that wasn't run by the city, like the option, it would kill a bunch of events like ours because everything else is just so expensive, and it's also so far away. So it's really cool that we have that. I consider them like a critical partner in the success of the record show. And they're all great. The people there at Palmer Event Center, we've known them for decades. They're super nice people, really fun to work with. Like, they like the show too, so it's been really good.
Nice. Do y'all have like a? So I've yet to go to Austin Record Convention because. Well, so I worked at Waterloo Records from 2000 2004, and somebody would always print up a list of who bought the most, and it was always like the same three people over and over again.
Like from the store?
Yeah, like with their good old money, what they spent in the music with our discount, and for a good while I was top three always buying.
Wow.
And I don't even know how I even paid rent
or where you put the records. That's my question.
Yeah.
When someone's buying that much vinyl, where does it go? Do you have a big house?
Yeah. And so Mel's invited me to go with him a couple times. I'm like, I will go bankrupt if I go. But my question is like, maybe I read this, that you have like maybe what Waterloo did is they did like in-store music performances. Do you have that?
We just started it back up. I believe that back in the basement days, actually, Dad had bands a few times, and it was cool. Yeah, I remember a rockabilly band. God, who was it? Was it Dale Watson? I can vaguely remember the band. I was really young, but and then we did it again. I think at Palmer Auditorium. Actually, I was in a blues band at the time, and we got to play one of the days on the old Palmer Auditorium stage, which I was very spoiled by that. It was super fun, but so there's bands briefly at the old Palmer location, and then maybe the first time we did bands at the Palmer, I don't think we did it at Crockett Center, those other places, but at the new location, Palmer Event Center, we just had bands this spring for the first time. And it was because I finally was able to book. The demand for vendor space I've been selling out for those of you who don't know, Palmer Event Center has two halls. There's Hall 1 and Hall 2. I think Hall 1's like 44,000 square feet or something like that. Hall 2 is like 25,000 or something. And you can merge them into one big hall. And I usually just do Hall 1, but we started to sell out and try to, I've just decided to take a chance and book both halls for this spring when I got the opportunity. And so because we used most of that space, but not all of it, I had a place to put a stage and bands. And actually what was super cool about that is I got to partner with Rock and Roll Rentals, which I used to work at as a teenager.
Did you?
Yeah, man. I worked at Rock and Roll Rentals from 96 to 99 or something like that.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And when I was in college, it was one of my jobs in college. And it was super fun because I got to see all these musicians, I was just some teenager or whatever, but all these musicians in town that are, either became famous or at least regionally very famous, if not nationally. They're all so nice. Like, I hardly ever ran into anyone who was like treated this teenage kid loading their gear badly. Point being that Rock and Roll Rentals, I called up Jim Norman, who's the owner, and I was like, hey, Jim, do you want to sponsor a stage at the show? Like, wouldn't that be cool? You could do the Rock and Roll Rentals stage, and we'll do all sorts of co-marketing. Yeah. They were totally up for it, which is awesome. I love that hyper-local partnership, right?
Yeah. I like that.
And so they provided the stage and the sound, and they were awesome and did a great job, and the bands got to perform. So this is the first year we did it, to answer your question. It was really fun.
Do you think that you'll continue with similar programming?
We're going to try it again in this next spring. As long as I can get both halls, it's feasible.
Yeah. You didn't do it at the last show because of space, right?
Yeah, the fall show that just happened this October, we only had the one hall. So when that's the case, it's a bit tricky, partly because I need the space for records, and partly because you have to arrange the stage so that it won't really disturb the people shopping and that are, and so you need to have, the way we set it up in the spring was we pointed the stage at they have an air wall, like an air curtain, whatever you call that thing, where the movable wall, and we can put half of that up and point the stage at that to where it keeps it from kind of, rebounding through the whole auditorium and drowning things out. And
true.
It was great, and the performers were awesome. We partnered with Spaceflight Records to get their artists on the stage, and we also had Mike Buck and Yves Monsees from the Antone's Record Shop perform.
Oh, cool!
That was super cool.
Nice.
So it was really fun. I got to see a bunch of great bands perform, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, I was really happy about it. It's something I'd wanted to try again for a long time.
Okay.
It seemed like
I was curious. I was like, are y'all still doing that?
Yeah.
I think maybe you did it once.
Yeah, I hope that you continue to do that.
Me too.
So did you work at Rock and Roll Rental on South Congress?
No, so when I started, it was at the original location where it is now, but it was a little house in that same spot on Old Wharf, right before you get to Lamar.
Okay.
So the first spot, it used to be called Danny's Guitars. This is like an old school Austin, but it was a funky little house. It was called Danny's Guitars, and then I guess at some point it switched over to Rock and Roll Rentals. This would have been in the early 90s, maybe late 80s. I don't even remember. But it had been there for a few years when I started working there, and it was this little funky little, South Austin house packed with like speakers and
God.
PAs and, microphones and all sorts of stuff. And we were all in there, slinging gear around and putting it on dollies and taking it out and stuff. And, yeah, it was super fun. I mean, well, in retrospect, it was fun. At the time, I mean, I always liked working there, but it was a lot of work at the time. But
Sure.
it was cool, man. I got to meet so many cool musicians and, people who at the time I didn't even know who they were. And then like years later, I was like, oh my God, that was Mason Ruffner, like, Rusty Weir or whatever. Like
Wow.
Yeah, all these old school awesome musicians they were just kind of really cool people who were really nice to me for the most part. And
Nice.
I just remember going to the South Congress location.
yeah,
And
that was a cool location.
Yeah, it was always busy. I remember, and I'm sure they still do this now. I mean, they basically want everything but your blood type, right?
Form, man.
I know.
Dude.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't been to the Rented from Rock and Roll Rentals, the first thing I'll say is if you're a musician or a DJ or a person who's into audio or whatever, it's a great resource in Austin. It's actually a crazy business model. You can go there and rent gear so much cheaper than you think, right? So much cheaper. Like you could rent a bass guitar for like 20 or $30 a month. Don't quote me. I might be quoting prices from the 90s. I don't remember, but I mean it's really cheap. And
Yeah, it is.
and you don't have to like. At the time when I worked there was no like, swipe a credit card and like hold $500 on your. They didn't do that, and I guess the deal is that the main insurance they have against theft and stuff is just this sort of human intel on who you are. They make you put down your friends and your mom,
That's
and
right.
they call them while you're there. They're like, okay, I'm going to call these numbers, and it better be your
I
mom.
remember that.
And I used to have that job. I used to have to call people's mom or their sister or their brother or whatever and explain what I was doing. Hey, yeah, I'm here. This is Nathan at Rock and Roll Rentals. I'm here with, Bob Johnson or whatever. And he says, he's your brother? Yeah. What? And then they'd be like, what is this? Who are you? I'd be like, look, he's here. He's renting some gear. This is how we verify that, these people are who they say they are and they have a license and that, that we can track them down later. But that's how they make it affordable is because they,
Sure.
they make it to where it's really hard to steal the gear and get away with it or do something crazy. And, yeah, man, it's just a huge resource. So if you're a guitar player, they got millions of pedals you could rent and mess with. And
Yeah,
it's
can
awesome.
you imagine like living in a town that didn't have something like Rock and Roll Rental?
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Someone, I don't know if it was an employee at Rock and Roll Rentals or like maybe a friend that is really close with someone at the store, but he was telling me about how like Rock and Roll Rentals used to have a baby grand piano or a grand piano they used to rent out.
I don't remember that at all.
And someone rented it out. Maybe this was after your time, and someone rented out the piano and just ran off with it.
Yeah.
Of course they did.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a while, Music Lab was also doing that stuff, like renting things, but they were always focused on bigger like, events, like backline for big concerts and festivals and stuff, where Rock and Roll Rentals is kind of, can do some of that. They have a lot of really powerful gear, but it's kind of, the pricing is, you can look at the pricing and understand, like, this is for, like, working bands that, need a PA for a gig and don't have one.
Right. Yeah. I have several DJ friends that will go to Rock and Roll Rental right when like a piece of like a new turntable or a new CDJ or a mixer drops before they'll go to Rock and Roll Rental because
Check it out.
Yeah, they're really good about getting all this gear when it drops. So they'll test it out, playing around with it for a while, return it, and then go buy their own.
Yeah, it's really, that's what I do with some pedals when I'm like messing with stuff. I'll go see if they have it first, take it home for a couple of weeks and mess
Right.
with it, and then decide if I want to buy it. And actually, I don't know if they still do this, but they used to do this thing where if you rented it long enough, they would just like sell it to you for a great price, and they would include some of your rent as like part of the
Yeah.
purchase price, which is great.
Oh yeah, I remember like rent to own. I did
Yeah,
that a couple times.
it was kind of like that. They'd be like,
Yeah.
I can't remember what the numbers are, but it'd be like, yeah, some amount of what you've already paid month to month, they would apply towards this discounted price for buying it used. And
Yeah, I've done that a
Awesome.
couple times. I there was this Yorkville powered monitor that I rented.
Mm-hmm.
I rented two of them, but there was one that I used all the time, and I forgot I was in the store once. I don't know, maybe I had to go buy some cables or something.
Was it the wedge?
Yeah, it was that
Yeah,
wedge.
they don't
looked
make
like
that anymore. I don't
yeah.
think. Yeah.
the one that looks like a barbecue grill, and it looks dude, I love it. I just loved it. It was
Yeah, it was a good one.
It was great, but it was heavy. But I remember I was buying some cables, and they're like, "Hey, Mel, you should maybe look into buying this monitor because you've been renting it out for years." And And then I'm like, okay, well, how much would I have to pay to buy the monitor? And then guy he looks, he
Yeah,
looks
it
up.
does the math.
Yeah, and he goes, how about you just give me $50? I'm like, what?
Yeah. I love that place, man. It's so cool. I always like telling, I play down on 6th Street now a lot, and I meet a lot of musicians that have recently moved to town. And I'm always telling them about it. I'm like, man, you got to find out about this resource. It's so cool. If you get a gig, they don't have a PA, you don't got to go buy one. Just go rent it. You want to try out a guitar, you're recording some stuff at home, and you need like a baritone guitar or an acoustic or something, just like go grab one there and rent it for a weekend or whatever. It's awesome.
So, speaking of your band, so you are a big blues guitar player.
I don't know about big. I would say stubborn. I just haven't quit yet, but I play a lot of stuff other than blues. When Russ and I were younger, I was in some alt rock bands and with him, and had kind of my weird prog rock band in high school. And but growing up in Austin, like I was always into the blues, and like actually what's interesting is one of the other people that works at the record show with me is my buddy Dave Whitefield. I think I met Dave when I was 4, like maybe 1 year after Russ or whatever. Him and his sister Annie, and it turned out their dad was one of the notable Austin blues bass players in town. His name was Patrick Whitefield, and he used to play in the Antones House Band with a bunch of people. He was in one early iteration of the Fabulous Thunderbirds.
Oh wow!
Toured with Anson Funderburg, like great musician. And when I met him, he was just my friend's dad. We go over to this house and there'd be like a piano and a upright bass, and we'd just be like playing Legos on the floor under all that stuff. But, so, you're in Austin, especially when Austin was a smaller town, you're surrounded by people like that all the time. And so I think the thing though so I was kind of like, rootsy kind of bluesy Austin music. I was aware of it kind of in the background of my life. It wasn't the first kind of music that really clicked with me, but after I started playing guitar, probably like 16 or something ish, Stevie Ray Vaughan was still alive and a big deal, and that kind of captivated me. And then it kind of clicked, like, wait, I actually know some people who know him, and used to play with him when he was like almost my age. And that's when I started like kind of getting more clued into it and listening to older and older stuff. And so I just, I really like it. I really like the blues. I really like, playing the music and playing with the musicians. And so, I've just been doing that off and on ever since I picked up the guitar, but also I'll playing other stuff too. Like my original music band isn't really a blues band. We have some maybe of those influences, but we also kind of do some Americana stuff. And I play with a band down on 6th Street every Tuesday at Friends. This band called the Southsiders. They're kind of an old school Austin band. The singer and I first started playing together in a band with Pat Whitefield, like in, I don't know, 98 or something like that. We used to play at like Trophies, and TC's Lounge, and all those people that I the reason I don't consider myself any kind of big deal, and I hope I'm competent on the guitar, but I don't think I'm particularly amazing. But like the people around me, as I was doing all that stuff, I got to see amazing people, like in the Austin blues scene. I got to do either play with them or watch them do gigs or both. People like Eve Monsees, I think when I first saw her play, I don't think she was even 18. She was playing in some band, like sounding great on guitar. And, I got to see people like, Mike Keller right after they moved to town, who's like just a genius on the blues guitar, on guitar in general. And of course, like I'm a bit older than him, but, when I was playing at TC's Lounge, Gary Clark Jr. would come around and play and stuff. And that was before he was a huge Grammy-winning sensation. So it was really cool to like see all this happening in the Austin scene. What's funny is at that particular time, like in the 90s, after Stevie Ray Vaughan died, maybe actually what I'm speaking of is the late 90s, early 2000s. For a while, like it wasn't cool in Austin. The blues wasn't like, it didn't feel like it was getting as much attention from like the local music scene. It was like all this other kind of music was kind of what was getting hyped up in like our local media, newspapers and radio and stuff. And, it was still happening. Like there was still brilliant musician stuff, but it just didn't seem like it was getting as much attention. And it's been really nice in the last, like probably huge result of these artists like, Charlie Sexton and Doyle Bramhall too, and Gary Clark Jr. and these people being like national figures now. They probably helped turn that around and bring it back into the spotlight, which is really cool. So yeah, and now I'm back on 6th Street now as a decidedly middle-aged musician, and I'm seeing all these 20-somethings move to Austin to play blues, which, there was a time in my life when I didn't think that would happen anymore. I didn't think people would move here to like because it was a blues guitar, like Mecca or whatever. So it's neat to see that that's still happening, and they're so good. Like just like always, the people that move here to play guitar so often they're just great. Wow. It's really cool.
I know that's wild about younger. I don't know, like all the younger musicians and younger DJs that I see. The ones that I see online, at least, are like insanely talented, like insanely.
Oh,
I'm like, wow. Like,
yeah.
Maybe what they're doing now, you wouldn't. I mean, like 10, 20 years ago, no way.
Yeah. The level of ability, I think YouTube and
Right.
maybe to some extent like other social media, it's just elevated kind of everybody. Everyone's gotten these teenagers that can sit home and look at stuff on YouTube that like I never would have been exposed to at their age, and even because it's one thing to hear it on a record and try to cop a lick off a record, but to like be able to look at the video of someone teaching you how to do it or watch someone do it live or whatever, and then just like rewind that and play back and forth. Yeah, these people are like, they're just like take off like a rocket in terms of their ability. They can do crazy stuff. It's really inspiring, actually.
Yeah, it is. I mean, sometimes there are a couple DJs that I booked, maybe in 24 for an event in Washington, D.C., and they were two twins, sisters, and they're DJs. And they're just so good. I remember like watching them sound check, and I'm like, you know what, I quit.
Right.
Why am I even doing this now? Yeah. They're that good. Right. You know what I mean? And they're at the time they were trying to figure out which, university to go to, just from talking to their parents. And I'm like, man, like, okay, yeah, I give up.
Yeah, dude, but I mean, got to tell you, that's exactly what being a guitar player in Austin's like. It was like that before the internet, though. Like, I was doing gigs when I was like 20, and some 15-year-old would just smoke me on stage, and like, named Yves Monsees or whatever, and I'd just be like, but it's at some point I realized, like, you know what, this is actually like good for me. I'm like, I should be grateful that this is like, I live in a town where people this good are like kind of always coming through, and it still happens. Like, I get completely buried by better musicians than me, like on the reg, but it's super fun. It's just a good way to like kind of motivate yourself to kind of keep at it and keep playing and try to get better at what you do. And
are you self-taught or?
I took lessons. It's so funny. I mean, I think it's funny.
Yeah.
I took lessons from some crazy overpowered musicians when I was young. So I initially I didn't want to be I didn't want to take lessons. I was like, I'm going to teach myself or whatever, And then one of my friends from childhood showed up one day, and I'd been playing guitar like a year and a half, and he'd been playing guitar like 6 weeks. And he rolled in, and he'd been taking lessons, and he rolled in and just played some really cool stuff and was clearly better than me already. And I was like, this is a terrible mistake. I should definitely be taking lessons, or else I'm never going to get better. And so I've taken lessons from all sorts of local Austin musicians over the years. I think one of the first, well, the funny thing is I was at a record show when I was right after I started playing guitar. And my dad, because my dad was a record collector, for the other folks who maybe don't know much about the history of the record show, like my dad was a record collector first and the inventor of the record show second, which kind of makes sense, right? He started the show because he loved collecting records. That's not me, really. Even though I have record collection, I don't consider myself a hardcore record collector because the people who I think of as record collectors are like, lifers who this is their job. So I'm like, I just have records. But I consider myself like an event organizer or whatever more than a record collector. But because my dad had such a great record collection and knew so much, his music history knowledge was really good. Musicians would come to our house as a kid and like buy records from him, or he'd call them up, say, "I found a record I think you'll really like." So like I mean, I remember Doug Somm being at my house. I remember Derek O'Brien coming by, and like Mike Buck. When he was, I think he was really young when he was coming to my house. Probably before I was born, actually. But like, all these Austin icons were kind of always around, and Rocky Erickson apparently came over. I remember a lot of that, and they were all, real chill. I was just some little kid like playing with Legos amongst all the 45 boxes or whatever. And the cool thing about that was that what was I saying? We were talking about
self-taught.
Oh, self-taught. Yeah. So that's right. Sorry, I'm getting older. Can you tell? We're at the record show, and Derek O'Brien's there, who I'd met before, and he's a genius guitar player. Now I didn't even realize at the time. I mean, I knew he was good because I'd been seeing him back in the day with in the Angela Straley band with Pat Whitefield, who's my friend's dad. We would go. So when I was really little, I was going to see these blues gigs because it was my friend's dad in the band, like playing at Symphony Square or whatever, and we'd go down there and see the band. And so Dad's like one day at the record show, and we're hanging out, and Dad's like, Derek O'Brien and my dad are talking about some record, and my dad's like, hey, Nathan started playing guitar. Derek, maybe you can give him some lessons. And, you know, Derek O'Brien is a genius of the blues guitar. He is so incredible. If I could pick a guitar player to just be like, if I could, it would be that guy. Like, he's insanely good and tasteful and cool. And he was like, he's so humble. He was like, oh, I don't know what I could teach him. So that was my first missed opportunity. At the time, I was, you know, I should have like really pressed him. Like, no, damn it, I demand lessons. Yeah. He probably would have caved in, but I was too shy to do that. So I think my first lesson was from Danny Barnes from the Bad Livers. I don't know if you know who the Bad Livers.
Yeah.
I went over to South Austin Music, and he was teaching there, and I got a few lessons from him, I think over like 4 or 5 months. It was awesome. He was so nice, like, but kind of like, almost like, I think at the time, you know, the pattern was like, what song do you want to learn? And I'll figure it out and teach it to you, whatever. So we were kind of doing that, which was a kind of a waste of that guy's talents. We eventually kind of stumbled into some really interesting stuff where he was just kind of encouraging me to improvise more, which I think was great. But that lasted maybe 4 or 5 months. This is my history with lessons is always like that. I think after him, I took lessons from Glenn Rexash at like Austin School of Music or something, who's like a great jazz guitar player who's still here in town. He was really nice. And again, I think I flamed out after, 6 or 7 months. And then I took lessons from Rick McCrae, who's like the George Strait's guitar player, who's just like a wizard level guitar, country and western swing genius. So good. And I think I only made it through like 4 lessons with him because he was so over my head. He was a good teacher, but like he just wasn't shying. He wasn't trying to gently ease me into jazz and western swing. He was just like, I think the first lesson or maybe the second lesson, he gave me the sheet music to Donna Lee, the jazz standard with like Charlie Parker and all that. He was like, just learn this, and it's got like all the great jazz licks in it. And it took me like a month and a half or something to get through like the first page,
Wow. Yeah.
I came back and I like struggled through it, and he's like, yeah, okay, keep going. And I think I made it through maybe, I don't know, 3/4 of that music, and I couldn't hang at the time, and so anyway, yeah, I'm not really self-taught. I had lessons and stuff, but it's just nothing compared to what people can get. I mean, I think that lessons are great, and if you're listening, you're trying to decide if you should get lessons. Like, yeah, just try it out. But I think also like the main thing that I've seen is just how much, especially with teenagers, when you meet teenagers, they're like their brain is like a sponge. You can sell, they could just go through YouTube and learn like wicked guitar skills. Yeah.
It's right there.
It's right there.
They don't need a teacher.
Right.
You can't So of course they're going to be potentially so much better than where we were at.
Oh man, I mean it's already, like I said, I'm getting buried all the time. Like people show up and just completely blow me off the stage with their skills.
Yeah, it's insane. But what's interesting about you is that just your proximity to all the musicians you just mentioned. That in itself is pretty amazing. At least for me. I mean, just everyone that you just named. I'm like, who gets to do that?
I was so lucky, and but that's when it's like a fish and in water. You don't really know that you're lucky until much later in life.
Sure.
And you're like, actually, that was really cool, But I didn't really know what to do with it, or even who they were in some cases at the time, But I'm grateful for it. I think it was it was really neat, and most of them were really super cool people, and I think that's always kind of, when you get into their music later, when you met them and you have a good memory of them, it's nice. You're like, oh, this is cool. Like if they had been nasty to me or something, I might not ever be able to get into their music, but they weren't, so it's super great.
Well, I'm glad you're still playing. I think.
Yeah, man. I have a new band that I'm really excited about. I mean, I shouldn't say new, but like we've been kind of playing off and on for a couple of years, but like I've been trying to get back into. I do my blues thing on 6th Street, which is really fun. 6th Street's fun. It's like a bunch of kind of a party, and you go and you like blaze away on the guitar and try to introduce people to. You kind of feel like my wife and I talk about how you're, especially at 6th Street, you feel kind of like an ambassador of the Austin music scene because there's so many tourists that come through there, and they're always, you can ask people who's visiting Austin, like everyone raises their hand. They're all coming from either out of state, if not out of the country, and so. As a native Austinite, I'm like, I appreciate that. I'm like, cool. They like came here to see some music, and they probably went here at Antone's and got to see some blues and got to see some people trying to play, authentic Austin blues guitar and stuff. And I hope I'm representing that as well as I can. But there's lots of great musicians at Friends doing that. Like Brad Stivers came by the other day, or Bradley Thomas, as he's going by now, and sat in with us, and he's awesome. He was great. Occasionally, Gary Clark Jr. will roll in and sit in on a couple. So it's super fun to be down there doing that. But I also like to write songs, and I like other kinds of music. And I have this group of friends that I've played with off and on over the years: bass player, keyboard player, pedal steel player, and drummer. And we got together for like this reunion gig at Hole in the Wall a couple years ago, and it was this particular arrangement of people that I'd never really put together before, especially the pedal steel and the piano at the same time. And the reason I did it was because I was going through this. I was obsessed with Little Feat for a minute, and I really liked like the mix of. And I also was doing a couple of Bob Dylan songs at the time that I really liked that mix of pedal steel and piano. And so I brought them together, and we did some songs and covered a couple of those tunes. And then after that gig was over, I was like, that was so fun. I really liked the texture and just the emotional, power of those two instruments, like played well together by these guys. The piano player I played with is named Dan Holmes, who's an absolute genius on the piano. And then Phil McJunkins is someone I've known for like 20 or 30 years who plays pedal steel. He's in the Moving Panoramas. Absolute fantastic musician. And then my bass player is the one I met in high school. He moved back from California to Austin, and so we started playing together again. His name's Mike O'Rourke. And then we've got Kenny Felton on the drums, who is in Delbert McClinton's band and is in a New Orleans band called Gumbo Yaya. And he's went to like the Indiana's, University School of Music, which is like a heavy jazz program. And he's like awesome. So I got this group of musicians together, and sometimes you get a group like that together and you're like, I can't let this slip through my fingers. I need to do something with it. And so I wrote a few new songs and dusted off some old ones, and we started going to the studio, and we have a first single so the band's called The Long Lost Locals. We've got our first single that's out on all the streaming services, and then we've got a full album coming out in a couple months, hopefully. And it's been really fun because it's like making me like write songs again that aren't just not doing only blues stuff, some rock and roll, some Americana, and some other. You put a group of people like that together and you show them a song, and it starts the song starts to take on a life of its own, with everyone contributing these interesting parts and ideas. And so there's some stuff on there that turned out way different than what I thought, but I'm like super happy with it. It's kind of a fun. It's just what makes being in a band fun, right? Like doing that stuff.
I mean, would you consider it like a hobby or more of like a career? Because there's two perspectives on both.
I always
right?
feel like my career is my hobby, and then music is the stuff that I'm actually here to do. But that's not how it really plays out. Like if you think of it in terms of time spent on planet Earth, the truth is I've spent more time at my day job than making music. Which I wish that wasn't true, but it is. And actually, what's interesting about that is that I asked my dad once, like, why didn't you push me harder to be a musician? Because my parents were always really like, yeah, if you like it, but don't forget to pay your bills or whatever. They were always very like kind of cautious. And I was like, but you're like a music super fan. Like my dad is like a huge fan, especially of like I've never met a bigger fan of the 13th Floor Elevators than my dad. And
Nice.
He like reissued their albums when they were out of print in like the 80s or whatever. Yeah, he got permission to like, try to find a way to get their stuff out to the world, and
Wow.
it wasn't even to make money off it. He just loved them. He was that obsessed. And my dad made a zine back in the day called Not Fade Away that he like photocopied and stuff, and it was mostly just a giant fanzine about the elevators. There was some other Buddy Holly and other things too, but point being is that I asked him like, why didn't you I'm surprised you didn't like get super excited when I started playing guitar and want to be a musician. And he was like, I just knew a lot of musicians that sacrificed everything for their music, and they didn't even, in some cases, because he knew a lot of musicians that passed away, overdosed on drugs, or just like faded away and never made it, because he moved here in like him and my mom moved here in the early 70s. And so I think he was just like, saw a lot of the downsides of people trying to be a musician and maybe it not working out. And I think that, so he didn't ever tell me not to be a musician, but he always him and my mom always would say, my grandfather was a drummer, and he would also say like, my grandfather's from West Texas, and I always say, when I started playing guitar, we got to jam some. He was like a traditional jazz drummer, so he was really, really, really conservative, kind of like brushes and snares, and one drum and a bass drum and one cymbal, and they would be playing Benny Goodman and stuff. But we got together and tried to play, and he would always tell me almost the same thing every time we talked about music. He would say, "Well, Nathan, music is something you can do with your friends all your life, but it'll never pay your bills," or something like that.
Sure.
So I had it kind of drilled into me, like don't try to be a bit musician for as your like day job or whatever, which I think I internalized, and
Sure.
I don't regret it. I mean, I'm fine with it. But all that to say that when you asked me that question, I think I kind of feel like I have a split personality in a way.
Of course, yeah.
There's like the musician who I think of myself as a musician with a day job, and I have this, but the career feels a little bit more like a hobby than the musicianship, which feels like a calling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. But it's great that you continue to be creative. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are coders and, folks that like IT people that either used to be a musician or used to be a very active DJ many, many years ago. And then they stopped. And then, just having conversations with them, they kind of wish that they didn't.
That's the thing, man. Like, I keep thinking like maybe I'll have a midlife crisis someday. But I think and maybe I'm having one, I don't know. But like maybe that's why I'm making a record. But like my daughter, I wrote this new song that I'm kind of trying to finish right now. I was playing it for my younger daughter. She was like, and it's kind of a sad song, but it's not like a despondent song, and it has kind of a hopeful message. And she's like, Dad, are you having midlife crisis? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I said, I think this song's about like real feelings, but like, I said, what would I have a midlife crisis about? People have the midlife crisis for, I think, the reason you just said, which is like they realize that what they dreamed about as a kid is something that they wish they could do now, and they've stopped, and and in a way that's good. Like if there's something you want to do as a kid and you're not doing it as an adult, like, yeah, try to find a way to do that if it's important to you, and if it means you have to, change your life around, maybe hopefully that's not too traumatic of a process. But I think that I've never stopped doing most of the stuff that I wanted to do as a kid. And it makes me kind of a fragmented and, I don't know, a little bit of a disorganized mess sometimes. Like I'm trying to like do my gigs and do the record show and have my day job.
Yeah.
It is a bit much. And sometimes I don't do much of it as well as I would like, but I just don't feel like there's much of I think the alternative of stopping would be a mistake for me personally.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I think everyone should have a creative outlet, regardless of what it may be, music or painting or whatever it may be. If it's just, if you're just going to your 9 to 5 or your remote job and that's all you're doing, I don't know. I can't imagine not creating something,
Right.
Right.
And for some people, that's kind of, they just have this dilemma like, okay, well,
right.
I'm really good at my day job, and it really kind of consumes and takes up a lot of my time, but I wish that there was something else aside from maybe working out or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
As an outlet.
I was thinking about this. I don't remember what. Maybe it's because of that conversation with my daughter. But I was thinking about like you get to a middle-aged phase of life, and like it does feel like time accelerates, and suddenly like you look up and like 10 years have gone by. You're like you just get so busy with doing all of the kind of the routines of like that phase of life, and it's really easy to stop making time for those creative opportunities or outlets, or just taking care of yourself or whatever. And like I don't want to sound like a self-help book, but like it really is important to try to like reserve some of that time, and just even if it's just a little bit, and keep things inching forward. There was one time in my life when I thought I might stop playing guitar, I think, or making music, and it was when and I don't know why I thought this, but when we first moved to Japan, my wife and I moved to Japan in like 2005, and I'd been in Austin my whole life. My wife grew up in all sorts of different countries, moving every like 18 months to a new country, and they always sounded really exciting. And I went and visited her family in like Indonesia and some places, and I thought, yeah, living overseas would be really cool. And I was big into Japan at the time, so we like got this opportunity to move there, and I took it up, and it was really hard, right? Because I had to like quit being in the bands I was in, and I kind of thought when I get to Japan, I'm gonna like reinvent myself. Maybe I'll do something completely different, or I won't have a band to be in. I was going to freelance do some work from clients in Austin that I was still for my day job stuff. And so I got to Japan, and like within the first week, I like sat in with some buskers on the street. They were playing music. I was like, hey, can I play? We started like playing and stuff. And I was like, well, I clearly have to keep playing guitar. So I ended up having a band in Japan and all that stuff. Actually, I brought a copy of this. Speaking of rare records, I brought you guys. I should have brought two. I didn't realize. But I brought a copy of a 45 I made with that band in Japan because it's
That's awesome.
yeah, it was kind of crazy. But that was a wild experience because I just stumbled into playing with these musicians and like started writing some songs and kind of doing a new thing. At the time, I was in either the blues bands or the alt rock bands. And when I got to Japan, I got really homesick for Austin. And so for the first time, I started writing music that I thought was kind of like Austin-ish. I don't know if anyone would hear it and agree, but I thought it was. And I really started kind of exploring that and put this little trio together to do gigs around Japan, which is really fun. Those musicians in the band were really good. The bass player, actually, Brad Quinn, he was the bass player for Tommy Keene. Do you know Tommy Keene? So that's his
dude.
bass.
Are you
Yeah,
serious?
that's Tommy Keene's bassist.
Stop, really?
I'm totally serious. He's one of the best musicians I've ever played with, Brad Quinn. He's so good. He can play guitar, bass, trumpet, flute, piano. Like, he's totally overpowered.
My mind is blown because his Tommy Keene's record, is it called Songs from the... is it called Songs from...
God, what is the name of that record?
It's like Songs from the... God, I should know this. I own it.
Dude.
Anyways, for the folks that are listening right now, the group is Nathan and the Naturals.
That was Brad's idea.
Yeah.
And so it's just us doing all right. But what's cool is we found a...
Is it Songs from the Film? Is that what it's called?
Something like that. I'm looking it up now
Tommy
because it's
Keene.
going to make me crazy. The Songs from the Film, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a very, very like important record, like
Yeah.
when I was a kid.
And 10 Years After is also really good. That's the one on Matador. That's the other one I always think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. I got to meet him because when I moved back from Japan briefly in like 2007 or 8 for like a year, and he was playing South by, and so Brad came and we got to hang out. I got to see those guys play and talk to Tommy Keene for a bit. Sadly, he's not with us anymore, but he was great music. Like, obviously, he was a genius. Brad is totally incredible. You can see clips of them on Conan O'Brien back in the day playing.
Wow.
It's so cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy about that? I went to moved to Japan, was in Kobe, ran into met Brad and got to play with him, and was totally didn't realize didn't know about Tommy Keene actually when I met Brad. When he said that, I went and looked him up. I was like, oh, this is kind of a big deal, and then started listening to the stuff and getting more impressed. But even if I never heard anything from Tommy Keene, Brad is like just ridiculously good. Like, after playing with that guy for a month or so, I was just like, this is one of the best musicians that I've ever met. And so often when that's the case, just as a sidebar, like, it's because it's people who had an older sibling that was a musician, and they grow up with a sibling who's a really good musician, and they become just like next level talented. It's crazy. So often when I meet someone who just seems unfairly talented, you find out that their older sibling or their parent or something was a musician, and they somehow absorbed a bunch of stuff. But anyway, point being is that I met Brad. That was wild. Made a couple of songs together and stuff. Had that band. We actually ran into a Japanese guy who spoke English that had lived overseas, and he helped us put that record out. It's called Space Dog Records. His name was Taku-san, and he's not with us any longer either. He was one of the first people that was like really supportive of the kind of music that I decided I wanted to make as like an artist or whatever. So I'll always be really grateful to that guy. But the point I was going to say is that being in Kobe, the other person that I ran into that I would never expected, you say you'd make a decision to go somewhere like, move to Japan or whatever, and maybe you have a list of things you might think that happen when you do that. But this is just how insanely weird and random life can be. I went to Kobe had a blues society, which I didn't know before I moved there. But I found out, I'm like, that blues society, cool. So I went down there and met all these great musicians, Japanese guys who were, and girls who'd love the blues, and we'd like have jams once a month and all play, and it was super fun, a great way to like make friends and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then one day, this older African-American gentleman rolls in, and it's Paul Jackson from the Headhunters, from the Herbie.
What?
Yes, I'm not kidding. I guess he married a Japanese lady, and he had lived in Tokyo but moved down to Kobe. And he rolls in, and it's just like, you're who? And I just, that boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
That's him.
Yeah.
I've been listening to that album. I just loved that record, and I was just like, I can't believe you're here. So I got to play with him more than a few times down there at the blues jams. It was just like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And he's also no longer with us, which is sad. He was so. There's a clip of him. If people want to look up and see how incredibly good he is, there's a clip of him and this drummer named Mike. What's the guy's name? I have to look it up, but there's a clip of Paul Jackson and Mike something just doing a bass and drums thing on YouTube. It must be from some sort of instructional video, and I can't tell you if it's a bass or drums instructional video, but the truth is it's both, because they're both insanely good, and the pocket is just airtight. Like the funkiest thing you've ever heard. They're so good, and he just played like that all the time, just like it's thunderous funk bass. It was so cool.
Wow.
He was also really nice and like wanted to teach people a bunch of stuff.
And so how long were you in Japan?
2005 to 2013, but with kind of a 1-year break in the middle of that. We came back for a year, but
okay.
Yeah, it was really fun.
So let's change gears a little bit. So you being involved with the record convention and your dad being the founder, did you even go to record stores to look for records?
Growing up, you mean?
Yeah, when you were a kid.
Um, I went to record stores usually with my dad, and I probably didn't look for that many records. By the time I got into music, CDs were a thing. Like the first
Okay.
albums I really got excited about were Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms,
That's a
and
good one.
Peter Gabriel. Or is it Us? Us
Yeah,
came
So.
first. So. Yeah, it was those were like two of the first albums that showed up on CD actually for whatever reason. So I remember first getting a CD player, and I think actually Pat Whitefield gave my dad the Brothers in Arms record, and I was super into that. This has got to be like 5th or 6th grade or something. And so that meant that kind of when I started getting into music and buying stuff, I was buying CDs. But
Right. But that was the first record that you got was
the
Brothers
first
in
album.
Arms.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think right around that same time, I got obsessed with when Back to the Future came out. It got me super into Huey Lewis and the News.
Oh, there you
And
go.
so that's the first concert I went to at Frank Erwin Center was Huey Lewis and the News.
Nice.
It was awesome. I was super into it.
Dude, that's super dope.
But I didn't really I don't remember going to record stores that often. I mean, that can't be true what happened was I think when I was like I want to say like 16, I guess before Rock and Roll Rentals actually, I got a job at Music Mania, which was a record store over on
We were just talking about
no
that
way?
store. Did you know Bernard?
Yeah, I knew him really well.
Yeah.
Him and my dad went way back. So I worked for Bernard for one summer, and I think I spent every paycheck on Pink Floyd CDs.
There you go.
And so
There you go.
That was like my first. I think that was probably my very, very first job outside the record show. I worked at HEB too as a grocery bagger, but I can't remember which came first, Bernard or the Music Mania or that. So I worked at Music Mania for a whole summer, and like I was, and so a lot of my memories of shopping for records are me like wandering around Music Mania, like just
Sure.
picking out CDs and stuff to buy. And,
It makes sense that the first record is Brothers in Arms. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Musically, Mark Knopfler and
Yeah.
his guitar playing,
yeah.
Yeah,
It really when Money for Nothing, that guitar riff just like is probably the reason why I wanted to even pick up a guitar
Right.
because it was just like so hypnotically cool. I never heard anything like that.
Yeah, I've never told anyone this, but I love that record front to back.
It's great.
It's like just sonically is just a fantastic record.
It's so good. It's so good. Even without the nostalgia factor, it's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, Bernard was always really nice to me at Music Mania because back in the day I used to be like this independent, marketing guy for record labels.
Oh,
so
cool.
yeah, so I worked for a ton of them, and most of them were like rap, like Houston based, rap labels. And so I would always go in there and ask Bernard, "Hey, can I, put up a display for, PSK 13 or
cool.
or all these just Houston rappers?" And he was always like, "Do whatever you want to do. Like, if you here, I'll clear this area and you could do what you want, do whatever you want." He was just always super nice.
Yeah, he was really cool. I think he and one of the other employees there, they introduced me to a lot of music that summer because there'd be a lot of times where we were just kind of hanging out in the shop and kind of doing inventory stuff or reorganizing things, and they'd put on music. And this happened at Rock and Roll Rentals too. I got introduced to a lot of really cool stuff I wouldn't have found out. And that's like the story of like being in music stores, right? Or being at the record show is getting introduced to like new music and stuff. And I remember they got me into Elvis Costello that summer. Even though I was obsessed with Pink Floyd, they got me into Elvis Costello and some other stuff.
So did you know Raymond?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Raymond works here.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah. I bet you he might remember me because I think he was there when I was there. Sometimes
That's how I met Raymond when he was
there?
Yeah, when he was an employee at Music Mania. Wow.
it's wild, huh?
It
It's a
is
small
very-
town.
It is a very small town. And then, a few years later he starts working here when I was here.
That's so cool.
Okay.
Yeah, we may have met. I can't remember if he worked there when I was there or if we met at the record show after. It's possible. My memory's a little murky, but I've definitely met him before. Sometimes that's the problem. Living in the same place for so long, you're like everything gets a little bit hazy. You're like, wait, where did we first meet? Was it at the record store or the record show?
1,000%.
Or
I am the same way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was telling Rachel or I was telling Gus, it was somebody, I'm like, how did I think after I met you, I'm like, I'm shocked that we have never crossed paths.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right,
And
right,
maybe
right.
we did. Maybe I was at Music Mania or whatever doing my record label thing and you were behind the counter. Who knows? Like
Right.
you're saying murky. Like I can't remember anything now.
I know.
Seriously, I can't even remember where I put my phone 10 minutes ago now.
Someone's like, "Did you have a good weekend?" I'm like, I don't remember.
What day is it?
What did I do Saturday? It just I lost it.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah. I think short-term memory is terrible. Long-term is like a steel trap in some weird ways. Like it's just kind of like you
Yeah.
guys are talking names and dates, but you probably couldn't say what you had for breakfast 3 days ago.
Right. Yeah, definitely not. Zero chance. Zero chance.
So yeah, Brothers in Arms and
Yeah,
Huey
dude.
Lewis. Like,
Huey Lewis.
do you know who opened for Huey Lewis?
Oh man, that's a good question. Like we could probably Google it. I don't remember it off the top of my head. I don't remember. I may not have seen them. I'm sure we
Was
got
that was your very first show, right?
very first.
Yeah,
like
my-
I mean, we're not counting like going to Antone's and seeing.
No,
bands,
sure,
like,
but like a big
touring
concert.
act,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
a big venue.
Yeah, same for me. Yeah, it was the Irwin Center. Yeah,
Okay.
rest in
yeah.
peace, Irwin Center.
I know. It's like it's basically a field now.
It's weird to see just air. You're just like, wow.
It is strange.
Yeah.
The Moody whatever is it Center Auditorium? I don't know what they call it. Amphitheater.
Center.
I can never remember
Yeah,
the name.
There's a lot of movies, but yeah.
the Moody Center.
It's cool. I
Yeah.
went to see a show there, and I went to see Peter Gabriel there when he was here. Was it
Wow.
last year? And
Okay.
It was cool. It's like a really nice facility. I try to be as a native Austinite, I don't like to be like, everything old was better than whatever's here new. Like the Irwin Center kind of. I mean, I'm fond of it, but it kind of sucked.
No,
The
yeah.
sound was terrible. It was ugly, and like the inside was really kind of uncomfortable, and it. The new Moody one is clearly.
Yeah,
better.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, Rachel and I, we have, I mean, I still continue to, but, we both have DJ'd for the University of Texas and the basketball teams. So we have spent our fair share of time at the Irwin Center. And yeah, it was getting old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a big, big room, right? So if you have a show or even a basketball game, if it's empty, it looks empty,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you need a lot of bodies to fill up that room, and then also like the concessions was like very reminiscent of like a high school
Yeah,
football game.
that's
Like, you
true.
had popcorn and sodas and
Nachos with that plastic cheese or
Yeah,
whatever.
it was more like roller rink food. Like
yeah,
what you got at the roller rink.
yeah.
But I was still fond of it. It's part of my childhood.
No,
so-
I mean I loved it. Like I remember when they were talking about moving over to the Moody Center. I was asking the folks at Texas like, hey, can I get the seat that I sat in from
Oh, dude, that's a good idea.
my first show?
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know, we don't know. Like, I'm like, God, I have the ticket stub.
Right, I know what seat it was.
I know, and I actually sat in it after a basketball game. I'm like, man, this is where I
That's
sat
so
when I
cool.
watched Depeche Mode. You know what I mean? When I was a kid, and
That's so cool.
and then nothing ever happened, and then they knocked down the building, and then I followed up. I'm like, hey, what did you do with all those seats? They're like, oh, I guess they just went into a landfill or something like that.
That's
but
a shame.
or I don't know. Who knows
Yeah.
what happened to them? I think they probably auctioned them off.
Yeah.
The old Frank Irwin Center.
Was the first concert that you bought with your own money, not with your family's kind of what was your first concert?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Was it at Frank Irwin?
Well,
Was
I
it
remember once I was kind of running around town under my own power, with a license or whatever. I think I would go down to the Black Cat Lounge on 6th Street.
Oh, cool.
And that would probably be where I spent a lot of weekends because I was really into Little Sister was great.
Oh yeah.
Remember that band? And,
Yeah, I
and,
totally do.
Patrice Pike was the singer. She's still around town being awesome. And Wayne, the guitar player, was awesome. He was super inspiring to me as a teenager who just picked up the guitar. And so I'd go see them. And some other bands. The Black Hat was cool because it was like residencies, right? So it was like I love that. I love when the 6th Street bars have like bands that are doing residencies where they play every week because you could just watch them get better and it helps like build up like a scene. So that was really fun. I really liked that. But I think in terms of like touring bands, Man, I don't know what the first one would have been, but I do. The first one that I remember, I think, is Fugazi at Liberty Lunch,
Nice.
Oh wow,
which was awesome.
dude.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
I have just because I don't remember being at Liberty Lunch before that, and it may have been the reason why I went there, and I don't even remember how I got into it. So I guess that was when I was skateboarding. So probably that's how, right?
Yeah.
They were someone probably put waiting room or something on a VHS tape of like cool skate tricks, and I was like, this band's cool. Oh, they're gonna be in town.
Yeah.
So that's probably like one of the first touring bands that I remember spending my own money to go
Your own
see.
money. Yeah.
Yeah, and the ticket was like $10 or $12.
Oh yeah, it was probably nothing.
Right. Well, Fugazi, it might be just $5.
I mean, it was wild, like because I follow I follow this page on Facebook. It's like I Still Love Liberty Lunch or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Mark and Jeanette, the owners of Liberty Lunch, I think they moderate the page or whatever.
Oh, cool.
So there's just tons of people posting ticket stubs.
Oh,
And you
wow.
get to see all these like shows like $10, $15, like
Yeah.
$8, Nirvana for
Oh.
$10. I'm like, what? Like that's unheard of now.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to go to I guess I tried to. I kind of looked in to go see Tame Impala at the Moody Center just
Oh,
yeah.
just recently.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe, I like them enough to where maybe I could spend like, a decent amount of money for some GA, like standing GA seats. Dude, the GA tickets were like $700.
Oh man, it's so
It's
expensive.
crazy. Like that's now the expensive ticket is the GA. It used to be the cheap ticket.
I think it's I think it's because of resellers. I don't think the promoter of the venue is like, okay, we want to charge everyone $700. I think it's probably resellers, right?
It's got to be, man. I mean, it really is wild that it's just it seems like everything at a big event is like that. Like, I don't know how we solve that problem. Is it because bots are buying the tickets and everything's being scalped? Is it because there's just so many people in these big cities now, like Austin's become one that the demand is that high?
That's probably all. Yeah, probably all of
Maybe
that.
it's all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't put my finger on it, but
Sure.
but anyways, yeah, just the days of, paying
I know.
that kind of money for it.
I know, it's wild.
You know?
I don't remember. I think the other touring act, this is later in my life, so it's not the first, but it's one of the ones that stands out to me of seeing an artist that I was really into that wasn't on was on a, not on a huge stage, but like was really important to me is I got to see, I was super into Chris Whitley.
Okay.
And the first time I saw him, and he's one of these artists that, like, even though I was super into all his records, the first like 3 or 4 records I just loved, but I couldn't play a lick of anything he does because there's all these super weird tunings and just like I try as I might, even now there's probably only like 2 or 3 songs that I can even begin to figure out. So much of his stuff is so like just unique and so hard to pick apart as a guitar player who's used to picking out like things that are more typical on the guitar. So point being is that I remember when I was at UT, he played at the Tower Records that was there on like 24th and Guadalupe. And I went in to see him in the in-store because like, oh, Chris Whitley's going to be here. And I walked in and he was just standing on the floor kind of by the front door, like with a box to stomp on to make a bass drum sound and his like, resonator guitar. And he just did a whole set and it was just, there was no one there watching. Like, I guess he wasn't he was well known. He was on a major label, but I guess the UT students weren't into Chris Whitley, whatever. So I just stood there, like, as far apart as you and I are, just like staring at him, being like, I know this has got to be weird for him, but I don't want to walk away because A, he's amazing, and B, like, he deserves to have an audience.
Sure.
So I just stood there and watched him do this whole set, and he kind of occasionally look at me, but then kind of it was too weird to just stare at me the whole time, so he'd play other stuff. But it was amazing. He totally blew my mind. And then I saw him again at Antone's a couple years later, and it was still just, he had a full band and it was super awesome.
So when you had your own personal concert with him at Tower,
Yeah.
did you get to meet him after?
No, I was too shy. I was
Okay.
like, this is too weird. I'm going to leave before he finishes because
You guys had a staring contest.
it's kind of
should have wrapped it up with like an autograph or something.
right. I think I was as a teenager especially, I was just really shy, and like I think I didn't. It's probably, I wouldn't recommend that. I think if you're a musician and you're younger and whatever. I mean, I know a lot of teenage musicians who don't have this problem I had, but it's hard when you're a shy teenager but you also
totally.
like really love the music, like
course,
you just don't have the guts to go up and talk to people because you're just like, well, why do they want to talk to me,
Yeah, you're
And the truth is, there's no one else for them to talk to, first of all, like, and everyone wants to hear like, I love your stuff, it's awesome, So that was kind of who I was at the time. I was really kind of shy.
I think we all were.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I met some teenagers recently who they're either playing music on stage and stuff. And what I really admire about them is that they're really just like put themselves out there and they're not shy and they're like, I deserve to be here too. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, you do. Like, everyone gets to be, put yourself out, because if you don't, no one else is going to. If you don't step up and sit in and play or ask to play, like no one's going to do it for you. So, and I think actually that's come with. Maybe that's a byproduct of the social media thing, is people have to put themselves out there just to kind of.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. For you, there's not really, what is it? There's not really, anything, at risk for you to be creative and make music and what have you, because you have a day job. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you could do this for fun, and you don't have to worry. Well, I got to pay my rent. I think for me and like probably other musicians and you, Rachel, that like there's so much more to it now than just DJing or playing your instrument. I mean, it's almost like it's really more time consuming just to promote online and to stand out than actually like work on your craft and and actually focus on music.
The hustle seems kind of endless, actually. That's the thing that kind of like blows my mind, is just the amount of hustle that people have to get to stand out, to get their name out there, and some people are really, really good at it and like are just hyper networkers, and are really able to like, I'm not saying it's easy for them, but they kind of know what to do and how to do that. And I think there's, hopefully, it's becoming more and more common because it seems more and more necessary to be able to be good at that, to be successful. But yeah, it's wild how much time people are spending to promoting themselves online, so that people will hear their music or notice it or whatever. So I do think, though, what you said is really true. Like, in a way, I'm because the record show isn't my primary source of income or my only job or whatever. I still hope one day I'll retire and maybe only do the record show or whatever, or both my daughters expressed interest in keeping it going, so maybe I'll just hand it off to them. But like the nice thing about the fact that it's not is that I'm not under a lot of pressure to try to grow it in some unsustainable or like inauthentic way. Like
or be competitive.
Right. I think we talked about this even at the show. Like, in addition to trying to keep the prices reasonable, right, I'm like also trying not to do, I'm trying to find ways to make it more authentic and like accessible, but not like dilute it, if that makes sense, like with random stuff, so the bands are kind of like, the idea there is like, well, it's not just any bands, these are bands that you could go buy their vinyl right now. That's why it was like Spaceflight Records and even Mike from Antones. Those people are making vinyl, so like, theoretically you could go right up to them and buy their vinyl after the show, which I think is cool. And they're local, which I like. It's like it's not just a record convention, it's the Austin Record Convention. So these are like Austin labels and bands and stuff, and it's Rock and Roll Rental Stage, right? And then the thing that I've been kind of thinking would be cool one day, because I'm kind of constrained on the budget, and how much money I can spend to promote the show and get the word out. And it's easy when you have an event like this to kind of fall into the same routines of like doing the same things every time. So I'm always trying to push myself to like, okay, I want to do something new, but I want to do something stupid or like lame, and I've always thought it'd be great to have a sponsor, but I thought, if it's the wrong sponsor, it sends the wrong message. Like, if it's, and nothing against, there's lots of businesses that have wanted to sponsor the show. I shouldn't say lots, but a few. It's happened before. And I usually turn them down because I'm like, yeah, I would like to have I would just take that money and use it to spend more money on marketing or whatever. But like, I don't want to do it if it's like the wrong kind of brand or sends the wrong message, And I was so the show was in October, right? So like in July or August of this year, I can't remember which, I was like standing around, my daughter and I were in Thundercloud Subs.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And
this.
I was like,
This is sick.
I was hanging out in Thundercloud, and I was like, man, I love Thundercloud. Like, I've been coming here so long.
Dude, this is
so
so dope.
and like, I always feel like the people there are kind of like the kind of I don't know. I have in my mind this idea of like what an Austin slacker is, and I'm always like, this place is a good place to be an Austin slacker. I feel like they hire Austin slackers, or else Austin slackers are comfortable there. You can always kind of maybe smell weed or something like that. But like, I just, it clicked. I was like, why haven't I ever asked Thundercloud if they want to sponsor? They do the turkey trot. Like, I bet they'd be super cool to work with. And so I just sent them an email out of nowhere and was like, hey, I'm on the Austin Record Show. I love Thundercloud. I've been eating you guys. Like, I'm probably like 60% Thundercloud, right, over the years. Like, would you guys want to do a sponsorship thing? I think it'd be really fun. I'm sure our audiences like are kind of overlap and like our vibes are the same. And they were like, yeah, cool. Let's do it. And they were like so chill. And
that's definitely some Austin shit.
Yeah,
right there,
man.
you know
And
what
I
mean?
was like, it was their 50th anniversary this year, so we're just like 5 years behind them, right? It was like super cool, and I loved it. I love working with them. They were so nice. Like, so I'm really hoping we can keep that going because that's a business another hyper local Austin business that I love. And that kind of stuff clicks for me, right? I'm like,
sure.
Yeah, it contributes to the authenticity of the event. You know, like when we were talking about at the show, I think once you start like aligning yourself with like a pharmaceutical company or something that's not even related to music, or you're maybe raising prices or you're per table, or or you're the ticket prices increases or whatever, people can smell, they could smell a money grab, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the part of the charm of the of the Austin Record Convention. Because like, I mean, you haven't changed the ticket price. What, like, when was it? Like
83 or something.
There you go.
That's like 40 years ago. I don't know. But like, I appreciate that. I hope that comes through. I feel like I want people to feel like it's an Austin institution and a tradition, and that like I absolutely love when people, like multiple generations of shoppers come, where like we've had someone who came as a kid with their dad is now coming with their dad and their son. I love that. I love seeing people like, who are so into it that they've bringing their kids just like their parent brought them, and they'll come up to me and they'll say that, and it always makes me choke up because I'm like, that's why I love this show. It's really fun to see people like, let me put it another way. Like when I lived in Japan, one of the things I really liked about the culture was that they have these like local festivals that happen like on a regular annual basis. And it's like a way to mark time and like kind of resynchronize with your family and your friends and your traditions and the stuff. And it's same kind of vibe. The things you did as a kid, your kids are now doing there, and we have that in America. We have like Halloween and our, Thanksgiving and 4th of July and all this stuff. But like, what are the things that Austin has, right? Because in Japan, some of these festivals are like local festivals that don't happen like nationally. And, I guess there's like South by, right? And like the Turkey Trot and, I'm sure I could name some others, but I really love the idea that the record show is one of those things, like for some people at least,
It is for me.
Yes.
Like one of the best parts of it. I mean, I probably spent more time socializing and reuniting. It was kind of a reunion with a lot of people that, like, old friends and new. I got to sit down and talk to Martin Coulter for a while.
Dude.
And then just talk to just.
Martin has been to every record show.
Jesus.
He's never missed one since the very beginning.
The very first one.
Very first one.
What?
Yeah.
You need to like sneak.
He needs a
200
badge
years
or
old?
something.
Yeah. You need to like slip his an image of his face in every little poster.
Right.
Like some little Easter egg.
We might need to do a Martin Coulter poster for the show. That makes me really happy to hear you say that, though, because I always describe the record show as the weirdest family reunion you could have, and I say that from my own perspective because all of these vendors and shoppers I've known since I was a kid. But I hope that's true for other people too, right? Like you come back, you see some of the same vendors, you see some of the same shoppers, you come with your friends or your family, or whatever. Like, I really dig that. I dig the community of it. I like the obviously the in-person and just the vibe of it is something that I try to not break, right? I can't take credit for like the fact that records are popular again. It has nothing to do with me. The record show has benefited from that for sure, but it's not because the show's not like doing well and growing because like I'm some genius, who knows how to market a record show. It's just because it's vinyl is popular again for the most part, but I like to think that something good I've done is just not to like mess it up too much. And try to do some new stuff. Like we talked about, the text to search thing is something new that I did.
That is the best thing ever.
Yes.
That is the best thing ever. So Rachel, like if you walk into the record convention, you have a list of records, right? Like you're looking for, like a lack of a better example, like a Duran Duran Rio Rio on vinyl, like maybe say a Japanese pressing. They have a number that you can text the description of the record, and they have something that will send it out to all the vendors, like send a text message.
Okay.
And so when they see it, they'll like, oh, you have a 50-50 chance of like one of the vendors having that record. And so you don't have to spend like the entire weekend looking for that one particular record.
Or rather, you can continue digging, but you'll have the kind of the peace of mind of knowing you also cast this really wide net.
That too. Yeah.
You'll be like, maybe I'll get a hit, and I'm also digging around.
Yeah.
Or I'm digging for other stuff.
Yeah, I found a couple records, at the last show,
Yeah.
through that. That's the best idea ever.
I've been really happy that people like it, because the problem I was trying to solve is, back in the day, for those of you who remember the old school record show, when my dad was running it, like we would do this thing on every, like, I think it was like 12, 2, and 4. We would there was a box at the front of the show that you just had to know was there, basically. And there were these little index cards, and you'd write what you wanted on it and put it in the box. And then at 12, 2, and 4, I think it was one of the local DJs, was it Ed Mayberry? One of these people would we'd have them come, and they would sit on the mic and read out cards. And what was supposed to happen was the dealer, who's already got a table full of customers, would somehow also be listening to this, very like announcement, and be like, oh, I've got that record. Hold on, everybody. And they'd take the record and like run to the front of the auditorium, and then like look around for the buyer, and then they'd try to connect. And believe it or not, it actually worked sometimes, but the success rate had to be really low, right? And it was sort of just a Hail Mary kind of thing, just like hopefully they'll hear this and it'll work. And probably the things that worked best were probably really rare records that like it's worth someone to like run over there and like shut everything down while they go. But I just thought we got to be able to do better than this. And I was trying to figure out what to do. I had all these crazy ideas at the time, and I was like, I even pitched one to Martin Coulter, actually. I was playing it. Do you remember that bar Nasty's on like Guadalupe?
Yeah, I used to DJ there all the time.
Okay, so I was playing a gig at Nasty's, and Martin came, and he was hanging out, and I was like at the set break or whatever. I was like, hey, Martin, I had this idea for the record show. What if I had a giant like TV or like projector, and I showed what people were looking for on the board? And he was like, if I'm the vendor, do I have to still go over there and like talk to them and get the record? I was like, yeah. And he's like, I don't want to do that. Why can't they come to me? And I was like, he's totally right, And so I was like, I got to go back to the drawing board with this idea. And then I was like, okay, well, I don't know how many of these vendors are going to be tech savvy enough to deal with like an app, but like everyone can text, right? And so, my day job, I studied graphic design at UT, or I should just say design, but largely graphic design, but also some interactive design. But over the years, I've absorbed some programming through osmosis. And so one of my more talented tech buddies and I got this idea to do this text search message service. And so we wired it together and prototyped it with, I told my friend what I wanted to do. He helped me kind of code it together. And I think the first time we launched it was, I want to say 2016 or something like that. And the way it works is when you get to the show, there's a brochure that we give you to carry around with the show. And inside the brochure, there's a map with all the tables, and they just have numbers. There's no names. It's just like the numbers of all the tables. And people are like, why would I use this? I'm like, well, if you text us what you want, you might get a text back that has a table number. And so what we do is when people text us that number, I have this goofy little web app where all the requests come in to me on the web app. And then what I do is I relay that. I don't share anyone's contact information with the exhibitors. I text all the exhibitors who have that category of items. So if it's a CD, I'll text everyone who told me, because they fill out my application for the show, they have to say what kind of stuff they have. So do they have 45 CDs, LPs? I could go deeper in terms of like the genres and stuff, but I haven't yet because the system's just not that sophisticated. But, posters, T-shirts, miscellaneous stuff. So we just tag it, manually. It's a manual process right now.
So it is manual.
Yeah, there's me or my wife sitting there hitting the buttons to send the message and all it does is it just takes that message and relays it to the vendors. And the reason we did that is because we didn't want, when we first made it, we were like, is someone going to, like, abuse the system by sending dumb stuff like Nate sucks, and it'll blast out. I bet they could probably come up with worse things than that.
Sure.
But I was like, I don't want it to be like totally unmoderated. That just feels like a dangerous thing to do. So we have this system where we can like approve every message and maybe tag it a little bit. And then what happens is the vendors are hanging out at their table and they get a text message and they get one number with all the requests. So they can just watch this one message thread and they can see all the requests come through. And there's a little code that they type if they have that item, they just type the little unique code and it immediately sends that customer their table numbers. So we don't actually have to approve that part.
Man,
and
that is so cool.
It's as long as we're on top of it, and I'm not the best programmer, so I have broken my own system multiple times and have to whip out my laptop in the middle of the show and like patch it up. But like, yeah, it was really fun. I did it the first show. People were like, the vendors especially were like, what? And I was like, man, just please try it. I really just want to know if it'll work. I'm not saying you'll make a lot of money from it, but after the first show, there were like 3 people that were like, yeah, I'd use it again. And then after the next show, there were like 13 people, vendors I'm talking about, that were like, yeah, I'd sign up to use, because they have to sign up to use it. They don't have to do it. They have to participate. And so now it's like way more than half are like, yeah, that's great. And if it falls over or I don't get it turned on in time, they're like, hey, when are you going to turn that thing on? I'm like, this is so cool. It's become like part of the, experience. And for the shoppers, they're more and more, I love watching people be like, wait, you'll what? I can do what? I'm like, yeah, we can search, you can try to, send out a request and we'll try to get someone matched up. And like, it's really gratifying to try to make it accessible in that way. And I felt like that was a thing I did that was in the spirit of the show without like fundamentally changing it. It's kind of just a lighter touch in terms of like a new way to search for records that's hopefully useful to people. But yeah, always looking for opportunities like that.
Yeah, it's the best idea ever. when I first found out about it, I was like, what?
Wait, huh?
Is this for real? And it works.
Yeah, it's like one brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, of course I'm digging, but
Right.
yeah, but
it doesn't replace flipping through the records.
No, sure.
But it is kind of nice to, especially if there's something that's giving you anxiety that you really want to find, and you just like, and what's really cool actually, here's a kind of an unplanned thing, like people will send their requests on like Saturday, and then they'll be there for a couple hours and they'll leave the show, and then they might be getting dinner or lunch or whatever, and they'll get a response from a vendor like after they've left. But your admission gets you back in free, like even the next day on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So they'll just come back Sunday and go to the same table and hunt it down, which is cool because they don't have to pay again, right? We give you admission for the whole weekend. So like it really kind of helps bring people back, and so the vendor doesn't lose that opportunity to sell this item, And I've started doing a thing where this is actually one of the vendors' ideas. He was like, why don't you just fire that up before the show starts and then send us the list so we know what to bring? And I was like, I don't know why I didn't think of that. You're exactly right. So now we do that. I don't always get that going as early as I'd like, but it's when it works, it's really nice because then they can. And what we do is we don't turn on the system, but I send the list to all the vendors, and then once they get there, I turn the system on and they start getting the texts and stuff. So,
well, the record convention, I don't know. It is, at least for me, a very important thing. I know a couple of guys that have tables there every year. And, like Bill, I don't know if you know Bill Bradley.
Yeah.
But he has a table there every year.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, before the record convention, all the, like, him and maybe other vendors and, like, all these diggers from all over the country, they all go to his house and they have, like, this big dinner.
Yeah.
And if they want, they can go swimming in his pool and stuff like that.
It's so cool, man. I love that. There's a lot of these, like, rituals. My dad used to have everyone over to his house before the show to do like a pre-show show, and he had so many records. It would be like a pre-show show, out at their house. And my mom would get so stressed out. She would be like, eventually she had to shut it down because it was just getting too crazy because they were like drinking beer and it was kind of getting out of control. And so they got a bit too old for that eventually and shut that down. But I'm glad to hear that things like it are still happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening outside of the record convention. You know what I mean? Like just kind of family reunion type.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I. Just like it feels like it's one of those things that the record shows in this category, maybe Rock and Roll Rentals is kind of in this category in its own way. Like we mentioned something else that I was going to mention too, but it escapes me now. But like there's these businesses that it's sometimes nice when it's possible. It feels like it's kind of nice for a business to not try to always be growing and like dominating or whatever and trying to just keep getting bigger and more powerful or whatever. You kind of, some things are just like, it's fine the way they are. Like there's not really a reason to like turn the record show into some totally different kind of event. People have talked about like you could have, there are a lot of things that I am curious to try, but I think that I don't want people to feel like we're just like either a money grab or like a just trying to expand for the sake of expanding. Like,
Yeah, sure.
I'm grateful that I'm not in that position where I feel like I have to do that to like stay in Austin, Texas, which gets more expensive every year or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Right.
I mean, I think we talked about this, at the show. Maybe collab with that coffee convention. They had a coffee.
Dude, that was so
convention.
cool.
They had a coffee convention right next door, and it was two separate things.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking to myself, like when I heard about that, man, imagine like going to this like if it was just one. I don't know how
Somehow some blended event.
Yeah, where you could just have access to both, and
Yeah.
you can get totally wired out of your mind drinking.
I need some. Yeah, man, I need the coffee after half a day at the record store. I'm like exhausted.
Yeah.
So I went over there and and I chatted with some of the folks. They were super nice. It was the Austin Coffee Festival, I think is the name of the business.
Yes.
And
Wow.
it was great. Super cool. And I've been meaning to ping them actually to be like, yeah, maybe we should try to deliberately because their events only in the fall, and usually in the fall we just have the one hall. So I was like, yeah, maybe we should actually request to be there together because there was a lot of crossover. A bunch of record shoppers went to their thing, and a bunch of people came to see the coffee, came and bought records. So I really liked it. We've shared that hall with some other cool things though. There was the Austin Model Train place came once. That was a bunch of collector types. That was kind of fun. The Rare Gem and Minerals show came.
Oh, that's cool.
That's kind of cool. I mean, there's all sorts of neat.
Right.
That's what I love about Palmer Event Center, right? There's all sorts of these interesting events happening there, kind of idiosyncratic, interesting, eccentric things, like us and like these other events. So
Yeah, you never know.
it's fun to see it all get mixed up. But yeah, the coffee festival was a particularly good match.
Yeah.
That was
That's
fun.
a great idea.
Yeah, make it happen, bro.
I'll do my best. I'll see what I can do. I'll try to talk him into it somehow.
Dude, that would be the best thing ever. Coffee and records.
Yes.
Man.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't stop.
Serious. Yeah, I mean, you're there all day. You got to have some coffee, right? I mean, I can't think of any coffee houses anywhere near there.
There's
I
not
mean, there's
really.
barbecue.
There's
across the
a
street.
Starbucks down the street, but
Yeah,
you know,
still.
that's a long walk to go.
That
over.
is a walk,
Yeah.
right? So Nate, like, let everyone know out there how they can find you online and how they can support you.
Yeah, man. Well, the Austin Records show, you can go to austinrecords.com. And our next show is May 30th and 31st, so next year. So I got some time to kind of relax and not think about it, but I'll probably start thinking about it again in late December or January. But if you've never been before, come check it out. It's not too expensive, I hope, and it's really fun, and the vibes are really good. Is my hope. Otherwise you can find me around town playing guitar and stuff with the Southsiders on 6th Street and with the Long Lost Locals, usually at Hole in the Wall. And that the Long Lost Locals has some music that you can find on streaming services. There's a single out now, and there's an album coming. And then, that's most of it. I think the thing that I think is that I'm a fan of is supporting Austin local businesses, and I think this isn't about me per se, but supporting places like Waterloo and these other businesses like we're mentioning, like Thundercloud and Rock and Roll Rentals and all this stuff. Like I think if you're a musician or someone who's into music, like there's these things that we. Speaking for myself, I know when I was younger, I took them for granted because I just didn't know that they could go away. But then as they start to go away, you're like, wait,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with, new businesses or even national businesses, but I also don't want the local ones to fade away or be absorbed and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to try to everyone talks. I don't like to be the native Austinite who talks about well, Austin was better back in the day or whatever. I don't really believe that actually. I think that there's a lot of really cool new things happening here that if you just pay attention, you can see it. But I also think that we, like our music scene, our culture, our kind of vibes don't create themselves. We have to try to be kind of mindful about it as best we can. And I think that starts with things like, what's happened here at Waterloo or hopefully the record show is kind of one of those things, and other businesses that we've mentioned, I think are a big part of that, making that happen. So I hope if you're new to Austin or if you've been here for a while, I think that finding ways to participate and support those businesses is really virtuous and makes the city feel like Austin still, even if it's kind of it's always evolving or whatever.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, I'll add to that. It's interesting when like I'll crave something, like a certain like I loved Pacha, the coffee house that was on Burnett.
Burn it.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And I used to love. I would go out of my way to go get their lattes
there
all
for
the
a
time,
while, yeah.
dude, forever. And even and sometimes I'll crave it, and sometimes I'll forget that it's gone. Or I'll be
Yeah.
driving around. Oh, you know what? I'll go to Pacha and go get a latte real quick. I'm like, wait a minute, that place is gone.
Yeah.
Just that's just the way it is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's life or whatever.
It
but,
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't sound depressing to say it, but like, things are always changing, and sometimes, like I've said, we were talking about the band earlier. Like I have this group of musicians here at this particular moment in time, and it won't last forever.
Right.
There's a million
Yeah.
reasons why it will change, and it definitely will change. But like, just need to appreciate it while it's here, and
Right.
and hopefully also be looking for new things, and So yeah, I totally get it, and I want to say, like one of the things that I do is I walk up and down. I live sort of close to South Congress, and so my dog and I go walking up and down there, and it's like super touristy now, and there's all these fancy shops and stuff. But like I went to Lively Middle School back in the day, and I used to run laps on that track, and I would look out at South Congress, and it was a dump. It was awful. And so when people are like, Austin used to be cooler, I'm like, no,
No,
not
no,
all
not
of
at
it,
all.
man. I mean, I know there were some cool things, but like part of it were there were really boring, bad parts, and South Congress has definitely gotten better. If you don't like it, that's one thing, but it's not. It was just kind of junky before.
Yeah.
Do you remember Just Guns? Do you remember that store?
Yes. and wasn't like next door the aquarium shop?
Yeah, there's like
Oh.
some sort of weird aquarium
I
place.
don't remember that, but yeah.
It was wild.
By
Just
guns.
Guns. I wish it was still there. It would probably pop off now.
Well,
Dude,
McBride
it'd be-
just closed.
What's up?
McBride just closed.
McBride's closed?
Stop. Really?
No
I
way.
think so.
What? You just rocked my world.
Well,
That
Wow.
family
there's
family's owned that shop for 1 billion years.
the one on
Really?
Lamar,
Yeah,
right?
Lamar and
By,
31st
Really?
or whatever.
Yeah.
A gun shop like shutting down in Texas? Really?
That's
Look
wild.
it
that
up.
that is very crazy.
That's
Well,
wild.
Wow.
Unless they just forgot to, refresh their display.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
possible.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely possible.
Oh,
I mean,
maybe did they just move? No, you're right. Well,
Did they close?
it's
they
well, Google Maps doesn't say, but maybe their website would. Anyway, but yes, like we say, I mean, you've just maybe proved our point. And even if it hasn't closed yet, it could someday. Which like we say, these things don't last forever. So point being that like
Yeah.
Austin is it's changing fast, man. But it's I try not to be cynical or kind of a downer about it because
Sure.
there's a lot of really fun, cool stuff happening that wasn't possible.
yeah,
decades ago.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm sure Rachel will
mean,
agree. I mean, you benefit from it. We all benefit from it.
For sure. But I also try to take advantage of the places that remind me of yesteryear. And there's what I call the old man table at Upper Crust. And
Oh, dude, I
it's
love
just
that
random
place.
old men on that long table, and they'll talk about whatever. And I remember one time, this man was just like, "Well, let's just agree to disagree." And there was a silence, and then they moved on to the next subject. I'm like, "That's the way you have a conversation if you disagree."
Right. Just let's talk about something else. Okay.
That's
Deal.
great.
Physical newspapers are all spread on
Right.
the table,
I love that.
Yeah.
but they're still there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, who's going to take y'all's place? But yeah, you got to take advantage of now. So that's what it comes down to. But I'm glad I got to see Austin. I moved here in '98 from
Okay.
San Francisco, and yeah, I got to see it being a sleepy college town, musician town. And then there was like a hit of money, and that disappeared. I don't know if you remember like the skeletons, like downtown where they would try to build.
Oh, like the
something new.
Intel building. Remember that?
And then it
Oh,
was
yeah.
like
That skeleton of it
yeah,
was
and
sat
it-
there for
yeah,
a few
and
years.
Is that
Yeah.
the dot-com boom or whatever?
that was that it? Okay.
Yeah.
We call that the dot-com wars of the tech industry.
Right.
It's like the Clone Wars, but way boring.
Yeah.
Way less interesting.
Yeah.
I was down there during that period because that's right after I graduated college,
Oh,
and so
okay.
it was
Yeah.
all sorts of wacky startups and
Yeah, that was
websites and things.
interesting. But yeah, I mean, things change, and I like some of the new, and I don't miss some of the old, and vice versa. So it's just kind of like it's just how life is. But but also it's shocking to kind of tell yourself like I'm actually older now. Like I still think I'm like 28, 32 in my head, and I'm like no.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you guys are the same. I have my little bubble.
Yeah.
Where I go, there's a grocery store I go to every day. There's a coffee place I go to often, and then I DJ here and there, and that's it. Not like, back in the day where I was always downtown and you
Right.
know what I mean, and just running around with my head cut off. No,
Yeah.
it's not like that anymore. And that's just life. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? So there's a new generation of kids that are just running around and
Sure.
enjoying it in a very 2025 way. And
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
Is there
All right.
anything else?
I
No,
think that's it.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks
you
for
so
having me on.
much. Yeah.
Nate, thank you so much for being on the first episode of The
Yeah,
Sound of First.
The perfect first.
It's an
guest.
honor.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here. It was really fun. This
Yeah.
is my first podcast that
Yeah.
I've ever done, so this is good.
That's fantastic. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, y'all.